wasn't intended, but I think our podcast is going to be like a ASMR type thing for people who want to fall asleep to road noise, because we keep recording when we're on the road.
Well, you say we keep recording, but we've only done this one other time.
Yeah, so I mean, so far we're at 100%.
Our track record does speak towards that, yes.
Awesome. Well, hi, I'm Philip.
Are we introducing ourselves?
Yeah.
I'm Anna.
Hi.
Hi.
Anna. It's nice to be on the road with you. We are in North Carolina. No, we're in South Carolina. We're in one of the Carolinas. We have been driving most of the day.
Yes.
We are headed to JAARS, but before we get into that, we got to start off with our silly question. Or maybe not silly, but just kind of get to know you icebreaker question for the two of us. So, my question for the day is, Anna, what is your best story that involves a vehicle?
Oh, no.
Vehicle could be a boat, a car, a trolley, a bicycle, Heelys, if you really want to stretch it, but I will not include a horse.
Okay. Gosh, all the ones that I'm coming up with have negative.
Negative's fine. You can be a negative.
It's not the best though.
No? Okay.
Hold on, let me think. My best.
Your best vehicle story.
Gosh. Literally all that's coming to mind is the one time I wrecked my car. And it wasn't even my car, it was my mom's car. Mine was in the shop. And I was borrowing hers.
What is this story? I don't actually know. Have I heard this story?
I was probably 17. I had a Toyota 4Runner, my favorite car ever.
Uh-huh.
And it was in 1990, so it was very old and had problems. So it was in the shop for maintenance, as was its typical spot.
Yep.
And so I took my mom's minivan to school, and on the way home ended up not paying attention to the road, watching a pedestrian, and not seeing that the truck in front of me had come to a complete stop, and so ran into it.
Was he good looking? The pedestrian that you were eyeballing?
It was an old lady.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
She had a dog, so that's
so you're looking at the dog, really?
Yeah.
So you were looking at a pup-destrian?
Something like that.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
A quadrupedestrian?
Quadrupedestrian. That works too.
It's not a good story. I ended up hitting the guy, and while we were talking, some friends of my aunt pull off the road because they know the guy that I hit.
Oh.
Like, he's like one of their family best friends, and then they recognize me as Tracy's niece.
Ooh.
And
how did that go?
Oh, it was good. Like, I mean, the guy that I hit was very nice.
Okay.
And yeah, he was very, very kind. His truck was fine except for the hitch. But I totaled my mom's van.
Aww.
So
that's a rough time.
Yeah, it was not ideal.
I thought you were going to bring up the time you guys got stuck out in the middle of Lake George on a boat.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Did we get... I don't think we got stuck. We just got caught in a rainstorm. That was... I mean, when Florida rainstorms, they just kind of... They kind of come down. And we were on a pontoon boat that had a canvas, like basically just a sun cover. And we had been swimming in Silver Glen, so in the springs we've been swimming. We were all freezing cold because the spring is 72 degrees and the air is in the 90s. So like the temperature differential was enough to make us slightly hypothermic. And so we're trying to warm up, but then the wind starts to pick up, and it's like, okay, we gotta go. So we're halfway back to our lake house, and the thunderstorm catches up with us. And so we're hiding under I think one of us had a boogie board. We were under towels that were doing nothing. I mean, we were completely soaked. And it was honestly so much fun. We made it back, and I don't think I've ever been quite so cold in my entire life.
Yeah.
But it was a good time.
It's funny, whenever you tell a story from like your childhood, you code switch.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
You immediately go Southern accent.
Oh my goodness. Yep, you're right.
Yep.
I did it.
I think it's adorable. All right, my turn. Best vehicle story. So this is probably one of like, I'm going to say my favorite moment in a vehicle. So I went with my dad and a team that we were bringing from our church and from the ministry that my dad runs to Africa. We're going to be traveling with some of the pastors there, speaking at some of the conferences and just kind of attending. We did a church plant with the church that we were going to spend a lot of time with. Church plant in the U.S., so like they came to the U.S. to plant a church. But we went over there for just like see how they do things, see how they run the place, get to know kind of their home church a little better. And we had a bus that was transporting, there's probably like 10 of us that all went over. And this is probably like a 15-passenger bus, small-ish bus that were traveling back and forth between one of the pastor's houses that we were staying at and the church. And it was really late at night. I believe we were coming home. I'm sitting on the back row with two of the other members, and there was this other kid, Aaron, who was with us. And he just says in like the most chill, lax voice, and we're going probably 55, 60 miles an hour on this road. And he just mindlessly kind of says, it'd be funny if we hit a speed bump. And immediately after that, we full bore hit a speed bump. Me and the two people next to me literally hit the ceiling of the bus. From sitting position to our heads hit the roof of the bus. And we slammed back down. Like, we were sure something was broken on this thing, but the dude just kept driving like nothing happened. And I just love that moment of
perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. The comment of, what if we hit a speed bump? Bam! Oh, it was wonderful. I'm sure he saw the speed bump coming ahead, but I don't know. That was a wonderful moment in a vehicle.
Well-placed comment.
Well-placed comment.
For a poorly placed speed bump.
Yes. Yeah. I just like the fact that my head hit the ceiling, and it's not like, I don't know, even if it's like a school bus size, like it was not, like I could stand up. I'm 6'3". I could stand up and my head did not touch.
Oh, it was one of those,
the
okay. I'm picturing like a 15-passenger van where you still have to stoop over.
No, it's like a bus.
Oh.
So the fact that I got launched like 3 feet into the air is just fantastic.
Wow.
But yeah, that's my vehicle story for today.
Fantastic.
All right, so we are on our way to JAARS headquarters in Waxhaw, North Carolina. It's not actually Waxhaw. JAARS is technically its own town. Like on a map, if you look up JAARS, North Carolina, it is a municipality? No, not municipality. It's a location that's designated on a map as this is the town of JAARS. But they always say Waxhaw because they think that'll help people understand where it is, even though it totally doesn't. So in reality, we're going to Charlotte, North Carolina, because some people might actually know where Charlotte, North Carolina is. We're going to be spending 2 days at their headquarters. I'm going to be, it's kind of like an initial meet and greet. They want to assess where the two of us are at, me and my piloting abilities and mechanic skills, and then just the two of us as a family unit, kind of where we're at with all the mission stuff. Anna's going to be meeting with one of the wives there who kind of coordinates everything with the kids. So
all the children of JAARS, yeah.
Yeah, so that she can get kind of an idea of what she can be involved in. And we are going to be, this podcast episode is going to be a little different because I'm about to stop recording now, and you'll continue to hear snippets throughout our week, just as we see fit, as we want to update you guys on something. We'll have a quick debrief in the evening of, how did today go? What did we do? What did we learn? What are we going to look forward to tomorrow? So yeah, do you have anything else you want to say before we hard cut? All right, so it's morning one here at JAARS headquarters. We ended up finding our way into our apartment at like 10:30 last night after I got us lost on the campus trying to figure out where in the world we were going. But thankfully, there was a lovely couple who led us to where we needed to go. So now we are refreshed, ready for our first round of meet and greets. Do you remember the time when I was like, hey, we're going to update you guys every evening as we go through the consultation in our first meetings at JAARS? Do you remember that, Anna?
I do.
So we're home. I did not anticipate our hosts being as generous in their wining and dining of us as they were. Pretty much we were either in meetings, meeting people, or out to dinner the whole time. And we were only there 2 days, so it wasn't a crazy amount of time, but
by the time we got back to our apartment, we were very tired, and at least for me, the thought did not even cross my mind.
It crossed my mind, but I was like, no, I'm tired. So, yeah, about that. So, our updates, so we went up there for 2 days for what's called a consultation. So, purpose of that is basically their staff looked over kind of my work history and my flight history and said, hey, we've had other guys come through our program with your kind of experience, and it has not gone well. So we want you to come up for just a couple days of checkout so we can see what you know, if you know anything at all. So that's the reason we were there, just so that they can kind of verify that I have gotten decent training and would be in a place where I'm more or less ready to join their team or take the test. And the purpose is them to give me a lot of feedback on where I'm at as a mechanic, where I'm at as a pilot, so that I could best prepare for the technical evaluation. And on that side of things, they said I did very well in the mechanic portion, just a few things I need to brush up on to be ready for the technical evaluation. The list of flight things that I needed to work on was a good bit longer. So it'd be a couple months of pretty decent training before they think I would be ready for that. But if I go back for the technical evaluation and they say I'm still not ready, they have a program at JAARS where they could help me get to the point of being ready before being sent out overseas. But we also, on our drive there, came up with a list of questions to ask people that we met. Do you remember what those questions were?
We had questions about any time back in the States from going, when we were overseas, would the option to come back to the States for vacation or anything.
So basically like what's the vacation time look like?
Was a question. Conflict resolution and how they handle that. And how they monitor and care for their members' spiritual walk. How they keep up with that and encourage that.
And then a lot of questions of like, what would you be doing if we go overseas and go to the field?
Questions.
Because, you know, if I'm coming in as the pilot mechanic, you know, are you just going to be at home while I'm out doing my thing, or is there going to be stuff for you to do? And that question, I feel like, definitely got answered. Do you want to go into any of it? How do you feel walking away from our time at JAARS?
I feel very encouraged. We spoke to several people about this particular question and what I would be doing. And one of these people was, in fact, a speech therapist. And she immediately came over when she found out that a pilot and speech therapist were interviewing at JAARS. She immediately came over and started going on and on about how much my skill set would be an asset overseas. She said, Philip, they'll find something for you to do. But
we heard that a couple of times. People like half joking but half serious, saying like, Philip, it's great that you have this experience. We really want your wife.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for speech therapy, a speech therapist to come in and help the MKs, the missionary kids, or even the nationals. I spoke to that speech therapist later. We had a meeting and she talked about how she helped develop some speech therapy within the schools when she was overseas, and how rare, well, not how rare, how scarce that
skill set
is. They don't have that in places like Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Cameroon. They don't have a speech therapist. So for the missionaries that have children that need these services, they actually have to leave. They have to leave the mission field and come home, which on the one hand was a very encouraging thing, that JAARS would not leave you overseas at the expense of your children. But at the same time was very sad to hear that some of these families had to leave the field for lack of services,
resources and support.
So the idea that I could be a part of that was extremely exciting. And there was also an offer of some support from this particular speech therapist. Because she does a lot of virtuals. She sees kids actually in Papua New Guinea.
And she's like the official licensed speech therapist, whereas you're technically be working under an assistant position, right?
Right now I do not have my master's, and I do not have my C's, which are my certifications for being considered a fully certified speech language pathologist. But that was also reiterated that my skill set, regardless, and depending on where we go, because there isn't an infrastructure for it, I could literally go and do my thing without too much restriction.
Yeah, because the nation doesn't have a nationalized speech therapy.
Exactly. So I would still be able to do speech therapy and have support from fully certified speech therapists. That was a big takeaway from all of that. Also, the caseload is smaller over there because it seems counterintuitive. If there's no services over there, then a speech therapist would actually have a lighter load. But because I don't speak the national language, there's also opportunity for me to do other things as well. Within the schools or in the community. So, that was a big takeaway. I think you talked to some people that had to come home.
Yeah, two of the guys who were evaluating me were home from overseas before they wanted to be, because their kids were having, I think it was speech issues, that they just didn't have any support. And so JAARS said, hey, we're not going to leave you over there at the expense of your kids' development. We're going to bring you back where your kids can get, the help and support that they need. We do really like, the fact that we saw that in the organization, that they are not leaving their people out to dry, that it's not like we will sacrifice you on the altar of missions. But it seems to be a very well lots of camaraderie, lots of internal support. I also like they have like an entire HR and counseling department within JAARS and Wycliffe of people who are working with people who are either having like interpersonal conflicts or I think just trauma conflict, whatever, either the conflict or the counseling you're needing. Like they have people on staff specifically to help their missionaries, their interpreters, pilots, mechanics, anyone within the organization. Yeah. So,
and everyone that we talked to, almost everyone, had been a part of JAARS for decades.
A long time. Yeah.
Most of them at the JAARS headquarters are retired now.
Yeah.
Which is why they're in North Carolina and not overseas.
Yep.
So most of them were at retirement age, well into retirement age, but they had been with JAARS for 25 years and talked about the different countries they'd lived in and the different experiences, which was great insight. But on top of that was also kind of a window into how, like, the longevity of
their people are not getting
JAARS.
burnt out, and there's not a lot of, at least, again, if the people we're meeting are at the main center, they have good relationships, but to meet that many people who have been within an organization,
it was everyone
for
we had met.
Pretty much their entire career, or a huge portion of their career, and to still be volunteering there after the fact, like that spoke a lot to me. Just kind of how the organization's going to run, how people are cared for, and the camaraderie that's in an organization like that. And that was very, very encouraging for me to see. Because if we got there and it's like, oh, everyone here is, like, we don't meet anyone who's been there for more than like 5 years, that might seem like, okay, where are all of your veterans? Why is it that nobody's been here very long? But to see an organization that has that kind of longevity was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially because burnout within missions, the potential for that is very high. Mm-hmm. So I think if I were to speculate, a combination of a unified mission and a passion for that mission of translating scripture and providing whatever is needed to make the Bible available in these languages, combined with a healthy organizational structure, and providing for those within the organization, probably lends itself to a longer career, just a healthier experience. So they have been around for a very long time.
They have been around.
Cameron Townsend started JAARS during his lifetime, so that would have been, I think, in the 60s? Or earlier than that.
I think it was earlier than that. I think it was
48. 1948 was when he started it. So...
yeah, so JAARS, Wycliffe have been around for quite some time. Yeah. And even the story of how JAARS came to be, I think it was Cameron Townsend started Wycliffe, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, he started saying, hey, my missionaries, my translators are out in the middle of nowhere, and it's taking them a month to get back to us. If they have a need that arises, we need to be able to respond quickly in order to support them in their work. So then he's like, we're going to get aviation going. We're going to get all these transportation branches going.
And radio. So JAARS stands for Jungle Aviation and Radio Service. Yeah. Most of that is
they don't do much of the radio anymore because everyone has a phone.
Right. And
even in the middle of the jungles, there's cell towers and phones.
Right. So jungle is a little bit limiting because it's not just the jungle that they're working in. Aviation is limiting because they have maritime and overland. And then radio is also, it's not even limiting. That's obsolete because they use cell and satellite. But the service and the and still stand. Yep. And they kept JAARS because
the focus on supporting those who are doing the work is still absolutely the focus.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah. And that, so sort of along the question of how do they monitor people's spiritual growth and walk with the Lord. The answer that I got when we asked the question was kind of like they do an annual review where you're asked questions for your spiritual growth, but there wasn't a lot of support that seemed, or at least like intentional accountability in your personal walk with the Lord, which, is a little bit concerning, but at the same time, I sort of understand, because JAARS seems to house people from a lot of different Christian traditions, from a lot of different nations and continents, like, it would be hard for them to keep people accountable to a certain, I guess, spiritual standard of relationship, because different denominations, affiliations are going to view that a little bit differently. So I'm not terribly surprised, but that is something that we're definitely going to be taking note of, that sort of our accountability for spiritual growth is something that we either need to handle, or we need to get like our supporting churches really involved in checking up on us, making sure we're doing okay and not burning ourselves out. Just getting focused on, oh, we're missionaries, so we're holy and spiritual. But like, I was about to make another What the Lord's Been Speaking to Me, but I'm going to leave that for the end in the What the Lord's Been Speaking to Me section of the podcast. So,
and I think when we're these kind of updates also are kind of incentive when I've got to update people on what the Lord's been speaking. I better pay attention. So this is a form of accountability when it's regular. So
cool. Well, shall we slip into that next segment?
We can.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right back into the point that I left off of.
Okay.
So one of the things that I kind of heard during the evaluation is I would be signing on to one role, either as pilot or as mechanic. And that's a decision that I'm currently praying through. But when I initially started taking this to the Lord, of like, all right, Lord, what do you want for my life? Do you want me to be a pilot, or do you want me to be a mechanic? I felt like I really heard him say, like, your number one goal and objective is just to commune with me. Like, no matter what field I'm working in, no matter what job I'm doing, no matter what my 9 to 5 looks like, my number one priority and mission as a child of God is to be in that child of God role, to know him, to commune with him, to allow him to really shape and mold my heart. Because, the Bible says, work out your sanctification. Let the Lord in you and the Spirit in you be working out your sanctification with fear and trembling, not be working out your career path with fear and trembling. There's very few examples in the Bible where God calls a person to a specific job. Like, when we throw around the term calling, I feel like that gets really muddled and kind of a muddy term now. Depending on how you've been brought up. But really the Lord's calling is like, if you look at the prophets, some of them had day jobs, some of them were priests of sorts, but when the Lord called them, it was just like, here's a message that I want you to bring to the people. And their job in the Lord was to bring that message to the people. You have examples of people like David where the Lord says, you are going to be the king. But David isn't commended in the latter parts of the Bible for being the king. He's commended for being someone who's after the heart of God. And that's something that I feel like the Lord's been reminding me of. It doesn't really matter what specific role I play or job I have. His desire and call for me is to just know him first and foremost. So yeah, that's what the Lord's been speaking to me.
Mine kind of coincides with that. With all of the JAARS stuff, all of the different potential paths that we could walk, all of the potential hurdles and obstacles in the way of that and other things in our lives. There's a lot to look at, and there's a lot to be distracted by. There's a lot to fixate on, and there's a lot to put our hope in. There's a lot to hope for.
Yeah.
There's a lot to hope for. But something that, and this is something that God's been reiterating pretty consistently for the past month or so, maybe even longer, is putting our hope in Him and in His goodness and His character. Specifically, I've been putting my hope in His goodness and meditating on that because the things that we're looking at are good. The things that we want to happen are good, but if we put our hope in those things and they don't happen, then that's a hope deferred, and that's disappointing. That can be crushing. But when my hope is not in the outcome, but just in the confidence of the goodness of God, then no matter what happens, I have a security, I have a rest, I have a confidence that goes beyond circumstances, because God is good, and I know that, and that is what I'm holding on to, not what I want the outcome to be. And so there can be disappointment, but there's no lost hope. That's what the Lord's been kind of showing me, because there's a lot to hope for, and there's a lot of potential disappointments along the way, a lot of deferred dreams and redefined paths and yeses and nos and all kinds of things that could happen, and those get overwhelming too. But when I can just sit and know that God is good, and something else that He told me several times over the week, just with little things, is just how much I am loved, and I can stand as beloved one, regardless of my performance in something or my failure in something. I can stand as beloved one and beloved by the God of all goodness, who has the very best for me and for beyond me. This is so much farther beyond the two of us and our story. And so I've been just reflecting on that a lot. But even with, this is just a fun thing, with the fireflies last night, we took a walk in the woods, which I love doing that. We were walking home. The campus is pretty big, but it's all in walking distance. Surprisingly big, But it's all within walking distance. It would probably take about 15 minutes to walk end to end. But from where we were staying to the main building was probably 10. And so, so we were just walking around, and there were a couple paths just off of the pavement.
Frisbee golf course through the woods. I think
that was it. Okay, but it was well trekked, so I knew we weren't trespassing, but it was still like in the woods. And as the sun was going down, we started to see these little flickers, and Phil goes, look, it's a firefly. And so we see one, and then we see two more. And then eventually we see like 6 or 7 and as the sun goes down, they get brighter and brighter. We even caught a couple and got to see them up close flickering in our hands.
So we just watched a video a couple months ago about how fireflies will synchronize their blinking. So like when one blinks, all the rest will blink right after. So it's like a series. A series or flow pattern. And so we got to see that too.
But just in the midst of all of that, we didn't have to see that for it to still be a great walk in the woods or a wonderful week. That was last night, our very last night. But it was just that was special because it was like God knew how to say I love. It was like He knew. He knows how to say I love you, and getting to recognize that through fireflies and sunsets and beautiful weather. I think it was in the mid 70s or lower.
Yeah, it was perfect
all
weather.
Week. It was gorgeous. So yeah, that's what the Lord's been showing me recently. It's been very edifying and peace giving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we will be, we look forward to giving you guys another update soon. And I think that's all we got for now. So,
Yeah.
signing off.